What is going on, y'all? Gamers Goon here today with Week 1 preview predictions of college football this season, 2024-2025. I know you guys are excited. Obviously, last week we did Week 0, Florida State with the big loss to start off the season. We started the season off with a big upset. Now, in this video, and in future videos, I kind of went over it last week. I'm going to more so talk about the top 25 teams, just so you're aware. So in case your college gets missed, we're going to talk about the top 25 teams and matches that I believe are going to be good games. We're going to talk about those, and then obviously teams I care about. So Illinois, I know they're playing Eastern Illinois, but we're going to talk a little bit about those games. Now, leave down below your team, and maybe one of these weeks, we're in the early season, so you're probably playing not a great school just yet. Leave down your team below, and maybe we'll talk about them next week or week 3 or something like that. We're going to try to get a little bit of a rotation. I'm still going to talk about the top 25 every single week. Games that I think are going to be good every single week. And then obviously still I'm going to talk about teams that I'm just really invested into every single week. But we might add some teams here and there. Like say you're a fan of UCLA, maybe we'll start talking about UCLA in one of these weeks. And obviously as the conference season gets started, we're going to start going even bigger and longer videos because there's going to be a lot of good matchups for a lot of these weeks. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be probably, I would assume some of these videos are going to encroach probably around an hour. So we'll end up seeing what happens. But week 1, we are starting it off with the 24th ranked North Carolina State going up against Western Carolina. There's really not much I can say about this game. Obviously, Western Carolina is not going to win this game. There's really no sort of rhyme or reason as to why it's even worth talking about some of these games, other than their top 25 teams playing against bad teams. So obviously, North Carolina State's going to win. But we still got to show these top 25 teams their respect, and they will beat Western Carolina. And now, obviously, as the season gets further and further along, there's going to be a lot more to talk about. But some of these games, there's just really no reason to talk about Western Carolina beating a North Carolina State, because if it happens, everybody in the world would be shocked. Western Carolina is not going to do that. Oh, and these are the Thursday games, by the way. The next game, I'm really interested in this game, believe it or not. I will be at the Illinois game, so I won't get to watch this game. This is a game that I might end up seeing if I can record. Coastal Carolina versus Jacksonville State. Both teams were over 500 last year. Both teams are kind of those traditional non-power conference teams that could linger around and maybe have a good year. They're one of those teams that could, if the right schedule happened and the right dominoes fell, make a playoff as a non-power conference team. Since we know one of those teams will get in, it could be one of these two teams. Will it be them this year? No, I think Coastal Carolina at some point will probably take up one of those spots in the playoffs. But this is going to be a fun game. I'm going to give it to Coastal Carolina. I'm looking forward to this game. I think it will be very exciting. I think it will be one of the games of the week, and we're getting it on Thursday night. So we're only 2 days away from that game, and it will be an exciting game to watch. So definitely look out for that game if you guys have not already marked it down on your calendars. It might be more so worth watching that game than maybe like a North Carolina State or... there is another good game, but for the most part, that's one of the best games on Thursday night. Next, we got another game that I think could be a pretty good game Thursday night, and my prediction is solely based off of Darius Taylor being healthy for Minnesota. I really like Darius Taylor. I think Darius Taylor could be a little bit of an X factor for Minnesota this year. Now, he does have an injury right now, and he is listed as probable going into this game against North Carolina. North Carolina, at least on what I'm looking at, has no injuries. But assuming Darius Taylor plays, I think he's one of the better running backs in the Big Ten, maybe even the country. So Darius Taylor, somebody that I'm high on, I think he could be a little bit of an X factor. So I'm going to give Minnesota the victory, assuming that Darius Taylor does play for Minnesota this Thursday night. But definitely look out for that game as well. That game will be on Fox, so that's another game that you might want to record if you're not able to watch it. If you're kind of juggling around the 3 big games of the night, maybe record one of them. And I don't know if I said Coastal Carolina will be on CBS Sports Network. If you have them, I would recommend recording them because these should be pretty good games. Next, we got a 22 Kansas going up against Lindenwood. Now, this one is just kind of like that North Carolina State one. It's kind of just a prep up for Kansas. Kansas next week will be coming to Champaign, Illinois to face the Illini, my Illini. They will be coming next week to play us. And Lindenwood, kind of a tune-up game. Kansas should win, and they should win big here. I'm not really too concerned about Kansas in this game whatsoever. Missouri versus Murray State. If this was basketball, it could be an interesting game, but Murray State, just not a real football school. They're not a team that I'm really thinking could get the job done. Missouri coming in 11th in the country. Obviously, they have Luther Burden on that team, and they should be set to potentially make a college football playoff run. So we'll see what happens with Missouri, but they are a team that could be very dangerous this season with one of the best receivers in the entire country. So Missouri, I got them beating Murray State. Next, we get another game that I think could be considered the game of the night. North Dakota State versus Colorado. Now, you might be sitting here, Colorado, obviously, they're a power conference. North Dakota State, they're not. They're not even in the FBS. North Dakota State is the best FCS school there is. They are. You look at North Dakota State, you look at them, and, yes, they lost to Montana, but they were 11-4 last year. That's a pretty good record. That is a pretty good record. Now you got Colorado with all this talent they brought in. Obviously being able to bring in a great offensive lineman like Jordan Seaton. Obviously they still have Shedeur Sanders. They still have Travis Hunter. They have all the talent you could possibly need when it comes to winning football games. Now this is going to be an interesting one because I do think North Dakota State is one of those teams that is uniquely placed and uniquely built to make an upset against some of these teams that when they do make the jump up, that I might be able to upset a team like a Colorado. They might be able to upset a team like a North Carolina. They might be able to upset some of these teams that on paper have more talent because of how well North Dakota State is ran. Now, with that being said, I do not think North Dakota State will win this football game. Colorado, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, they will be enough. Colorado will get the job done. They have an interesting schedule coming up. They have Nebraska, which is going to be a tough game. And obviously that Colorado State game is always going to be a tricky one for them. But North Dakota State should be a victory here for Deion Sanders in Colorado. Next, we get to my Illinois, fighting Illini, going up against Eastern Illinois. This, for us, very similar to Kansas, is a tune-up game. Now, in this game, I obviously would want to see some... last year, our run game was not great. Following a year, obviously, with Chase Brown being one of the best running backs in the country, there's obviously going to be some drop-off, right? But I do like the running backs that they have on the team. Josh McCray, Caden Fegan, Aiden Lowry. They got guys that could be very entertaining this season at that running back position. Now, you pair that up with Zachary Franklin, who I think was a great pickup for Illinois, an elite receiver that ended up just falling to us in the portal after a year of being injured. I believe he was at Ole Miss last year after some years at UTSA, who's played with our offensive coordinator, Lunny. I think Zachary Franklin will be a very, 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 very big part of this offense this season. You pair that with Pat Bryant, who was, on paper, probably the receiver one, and that might be tested a little bit with Zachary Franklin there. You pair that with him, Mario Williams, who you have Kenari Wilshire. That offense could be very exciting. Now, the big question mark with Illinois is the guy that I got a jersey of last year, right before he actually got benched for John Paddock, and that is my boy Luke Altmaier. I think Luke Altmaier is really good when he's at his best. The problem is the consistency hasn't always been there with Altmaier, and at times, we saw it last year when we brought in Paddock, it looked like Paddock had an easier time than Altmaier. Now, in the offseason, hopefully that got fixed. I do like Altmaier when he obviously has those type of games where he's that guy, but we're going to end up seeing what Altmaier's really made out of. Now, that defense, I'm not worried about it one bit. I'm not worried about defense one bit. I think our defense is going to be up for the task. Rosiek's there. I don't know if you guys have heard me say this before, but Gabe Yakis, one of my favorite players on the entire team on that defensive line. I mean, they just have a lot of talent, just even in that front, on that defensive line and in the linebacker room. And then that's before you even start talking about the corners, the Miles Scotts, and then those kind of guys, right? So, and Matthew Bailey too, somebody that hopefully, if he's healthy, could be one of the best safeties in the Big Ten this season. But yeah, Illinois, I'm very excited to see him play. Eastern Illinois, I'll be at this game. I expect Illinois to win this game. They should win it pretty easily. So I'm hoping this game is one of those games where we kind of just tune up our running. Early, we have Altmaier show a little bit of what he can do, maybe get the ball to Zachary Franklin a little bit, Pat Bryant a little bit, but really start doing that run game, wasting some clock, just getting out of here without any injuries or anything crazy like that, and getting to that Kansas game next week without giving out too much of what our game plan could be going into that week. So that's kind of just what we're looking at for both Kansas and us, is two teams that probably aren't going to show too much of their cards going into next week because they will be playing against each other. And the last game on Thursday that we will be talking about is ranked 12 Utah going up against Southern Utah. Utah's going to win that game. Cam Rising is back. Cam Rising is not going to be losing to a team like Southern Utah anytime soon. Next, Friday, we do have two games we're going to be talking about on Friday. Temple versus Oklahoma. Oklahoma, really solid team, right? Top 16 team right now. And they're going up against Temple. Now, Temple, not a good team last year. They just weren't a good team last year. Starting it off with a top 25 opponent in Oklahoma, it's not going to happen. Oklahoma wins this game, wins it big. Then we get to Florida Atlantic against Michigan State. Now, this game could be interesting. Michigan State is favored to win by 2 touchdowns. I don't necessarily hold the same belief. I know Florida Atlantic was 4-8 last year, but I also don't really think Michigan State is that great, because they were also 4-8 last year, and I do have some questions at that QB position when it does come to Michigan State. So, with that being said, it could be an interesting game. I'm not really sure who their starting QB is going to be. I would assume it's going to be Aiden Childs. I would assume it's going to be him, but it might not be. And Florida Atlantic, both teams, interesting teams. I'm going to go with Michigan State because they are favored, but that could be an interesting game to watch, which is why I had it marked down as one of the games I wanted to briefly touch up on. Saturday, now the big day. I'm going to be sitting home. I'm going to be hitting a can of nachos out and grabbing some Coke from the fridge and just having a blast, right? Order some pizza maybe. It's going to be fun. Clemson versus Georgia. To start off the day, Clemson in Georgia, 11 a.m. I don't know if game day is going to be here. Game day should be here, right? Game day is going to be there. I'm just saying it. I'm assuming it's going to be there. Why would it not be at this game, right? I don't know where game day is going to actually be. But it should be at this game. It should be. Clemson versus Georgia. Georgia, obviously, if you watch my top 20, not my top 25, my college football playoff predictions, I think Georgia will have a hiccup at some point this season. Will it be week 1? Is Carson Beck going to have a hiccup against Clemson? I don't believe so. Clemson is another team that I do have making it into the playoffs. You look at their schedule after Georgia. Looks like a lot of victories to me, and it looks like maybe if Florida State decides they want to be a top 25 team again, maybe they can do something, or maybe NC State can do something. So really, when you're looking at their schedule, there's 3 potential losses on their schedule: Georgia, NC State, and then obviously Florida State. Because I'm not really too concerned about a lot of these opponents if you're Clemson. So if you can get over this Georgia hump, there's a good chance that Clemson goes undefeated this whole season. There's a good chance that Dabo Swinney goes undefeated if they can get past Georgia. Do I think they're getting past Georgia? I do not. I don't think they're going to get past Georgia. I have Georgia winning this game, but this could be a very important game for Clemson. This could be the difference from them being the 1 seed in the football playoffs or being like a 6th or 7th seed in the college football playoffs. Because you look at this, Georgia's their biggest hurdle, and they're playing them week 1. You have maybe a little bit of a hurdle in Florida State if there's actually a top 25 team. Kind of shaky offensive performance. Don't really know what to gauge out of that from last week against Georgia Tech. And we also don't really have a standard for Georgia Tech if we haven't seen really what Georgia Tech looks like against other teams. Maybe Georgia Tech is just a good team, right? But for the sake of it, Clemson, they get over this Georgia hurdle, and they could very well go undefeated. So it's a big game. We're starting off the season with a big game. Why is my OneDrive updating? Why is it updating? It don't need to update. It don't need to update right now. But I'm gonna have Georgia win. Next we get Iowa versus Illinois State. Really one of those games we don't need to talk too much about. Iowa will win this game. Penn State versus West Virginia could be a little interesting. West Virginia is not a team that I think is horrible. You look at them last year, 9-4. They have some potential to maybe upset a team like a Penn State. My phone is vibrating. Penn State, though, has, in my opinion, a top 3 running back duo in the entire country, with Katron Allen and Singleton there. So Penn State going to be tough for West Virginia, but if a team could do it, a West Virginia-type team could be the ones to maybe give an upset. And they do have Penn State winning, it looks like, about by 8 points. So it's supposed to be a somewhat close game, so it could be a fun game to watch. Tennessee versus Chattanooga, really not too much to talk about. Tennessee will win this game. I do believe their quarterback will be Nico. I cannot pronounce his last name. I'm sorry, but he played last year in, I believe, in their bowl game. But Nico, from what I've heard from my boy Cam, who's a Tennessee fan, they're pretty excited about him next season. This season, I guess. But Chattanooga gonna be one of those tune-up games once again. Oklahoma State, number 17th in the country. They have South Dakota State, which could get a little interesting because these Dakota teams, man, they usually run the table with the FCS, right? South Dakota State was undefeated last season. They were undefeated last season, won 23-3 against Montana. Was it Montana State? Yeah, no, just Montana. Oklahoma State, though, they're just too big of a program. I get it. If South Dakota State was playing like one of those middling tier, like if they were playing like an Illinois, I'd have Illinois lose. That's the kind of team this is, right? They can beat those middling teams, I think. But I don't think those top 25 teams are going to be losing to South Dakota State. So I'm going to have Oklahoma State win that game. Miami versus Florida could be interesting. Miami, a team I'm not extremely high on. Last year, Miami finished the season 7-6. They always have some portal success. Florida, though, they finished 5-7. Florida needs a big win to start off the season. I think they could get the job done against Miami. That's going to be my upset of the week. I'm going to have Florida beat Miami. Not a huge upset, but it is an upset nonetheless. Next, we have Akron versus Ohio State. Really not much to talk about. This is going to be a tune-up. Quinshon Judkins. I'm very excited to see what he looks like for Ohio State because we got a matchup against them scheduled later this season up in Eugene, Oregon that I think could be really, really fun. Seeing that Ohio State offense versus that Oregon offense, I think that'll be a very, very good game later this season. But that ain't this week. Ohio State, this is a tune-up. We'll get them ready for the games later this season. Ohio State wins this game. Wins it big. Line's 49.5. Don't be surprised if Ohio State beats that. Colorado State versus Texas. Colorado State versus Texas. Texas is heavy favorites in this game. Do not fall for it. Colorado State will keep this game close. Now, Texas will win. Texas will win, but it is not going to be a 32.5 game. I'm thinking more of like a 14 or a 21-point game. I think Colorado State will find the end zone at some point. I don't think this is going to be a Texas tune-up. I do think they will win comfortably, but I don't think this is one of those games that you see the starters pulled at halftime. I don't see that being this kind of game. Colorado State, I really like what they got. They got a receiver there that was really, really solid last year, so I'm excited to see what they can do. We're going to talk a little bit about North Texas versus South Alabama. North Texas, one of the schools that I almost went to, so I want to talk a little bit about them because I do still keep up with them. Very nice campus, by the way. Very nice campus there in Denton. But this is going to be a fun game for me. It's ESPN Plus if you guys want to watch it. North Texas last year was 5-7. South Alabama last year was 7-6. So, I mean, two teams kind of around the same type of skill level. South Alabama probably wins, but I'm going to go and roll with the North Texas Mean Green because they so graciously accepted me into their school even though I didn't go there. Next, we got Ole Miss versus Furman. Number 6, Ole Miss versus Furman. This ain't March Madness. Ole Miss wins. Alabama versus Western Kentucky. Alabama wins this easily. Kansas State versus Tennessee Martin. Let me go with Tennessee Martin to lose. Idaho versus Oregon. Dylan Gabriel is going to start his Heisman campaign. So Oregon wins by about 63. Fresno State versus Michigan. Could be a little interesting if Fresno State decides that they want to have a good year. A 9-4 team last season. Michigan lost a lot of talent on the offense. Lost some defensive stars. Michigan still wins this game, though. You got to go tackle Donovan Edwards. Not happening if you're Fresno State. Notre Dame versus Texas A&M. Now, that's not going to be one of those games we just gloss over. We can't gloss over at Notre Dame versus Texas A&M. Notre Dame, I believe, will have one of the best defenses in the country. A&M, obviously, we know, big portal class, a lot of hype around them right now. You look at them, it's probably going to be a pretty good team. It's probably going to be a pretty good team when it comes to A&M. But Notre Dame's defense is very, very impressive to me. And then you look at them offensively, they brought in Riley Leonard from Duke at the QB position. Notre Dame is one of those teams I think could be a sneaky, potentially number 1 seed in that CFP. Notre Dame, I like what they got going on. I like that they now have a QB that has been there, done that. You look at their schedule, Florida State might be a game that they lose. Maybe USC, maybe a Georgia Tech. And then A&M. So, very similar to Clemson, they only have one pretty big hurdle, and it's week 1. So, Notre Dame, I'm going to have Notre Dame win this one, and that could start them on a path to the number 1 seed. Next, we're going to talk about Kentucky and Southern Miss. Kentucky, a team that I've always fancied. I always thought they were pretty good. And they're a fun team to watch. I mean, they're never going to really blow you. I mean, there has been years where there have been top 25 teams, right? But they're never really going to blow you away. They're never going to win a national championship. I'm going to actually retract that statement. They haven't won a national championship in football in my lifetime. If it happens, that'd be crazy. But not a team that you expect to win a national championship when it comes to Kentucky, but always a fun team to watch. They play Southern Miss. They're 28-point favorites. They will win the game. Arizona versus New Mexico. Arizona, 32-point favorites. They have potentially a Heisman-winning quarterback on that team. In Noah Fafita. They got another guy that could be a Biletnikoff winner there with Excuse me if I mispronounce his name. Teteroa McMillan. Pretty solid last year. We thought he might hit the portal. He didn't hit the portal. But McMillan, one of the better receivers in the whole country. Somebody that you expect to be pretty good. And that wraps up that stuff on Saturday, which means now we go to Sunday, LSU versus USC. LSU wins. USC, I think, are going to be a little overrated. I don't buy into their QB. I believe it's Miller Moss. Is that what his name is? I believe his name is Miller Moss. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of him. I'm not a huge fan of him. LSU, I do think, has enough talent to get the job done. And then we got Boston College versus Florida State. Florida State is top 10 currently. They just lost to Georgia Tech. Boston College, very similar to Georgia Tech, a team that I think could pull off an upset. I'm going to still give it to Florida State, though. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. And leave a comment down below if your team was not announced. And let me know who I should talk about in the future. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.